For 6 months too.
You're kidding, for study abroad, that's cool.
Okay. All right, at this point, I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the September monthly meeting of the Pine Hill Shores Board of Commissioners. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Okay, the next item is the approval of the agenda. And at this point, I will entertain a motion to add or delete items or to approve the agenda as presented. Commissioner Edwards.
Because of the importance of the issue, I'd like to have I realize you're going to explain it, but I'd like to have the Rutherford resolution. So there's time for more explanation, and also the volunteer appointments.
Okay, are you saying
Taking off the consent agenda.
and are we adding them somewhere back in somewhere else
Yeah, I suppose on a new business.
under new business?
I don't know, that would be the only place to put it, I think.
Do we need a motion to make that change or?
Yeah,
Yeah.
a motion in a second, and then, yeah, vote, make that.
Anybody like to make, second that motion? Well, I guess we're going to leave it where it is in that case.
I make a motion to approve the agenda as published.
Second.
Do we have a motion on the floor to approve the agenda as presented? And a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Okay. It's 4-1 in favor of approving the agenda. Disclosures or conflicts of interest. Based on the agenda just approved, does anyone have any disclosures or conflicts or appearances of a conflict of interest they would like to divulge at this point? We start down here. Ken?
No conflict.
Nothing?
No.
No.
Bill? Okay.
No.
No disclosures or conflicts of interest. Okay, our next agenda item is the announcements. And I've got a couple others I'm going to add here to what we have on our list. And that is on September 14th, Moorhead City is going to have a grand opening of its new city hall at 5:30 p.m. Now they're going to start at their old council chambers on 8th Street and then immediately get up and move to the new city hall at 1100 Bridges Street. And there they will have a ribbon cutting ceremony followed by a council meeting, and then you get cake and a tour of the new building. Probably you have to sit through that council. Also, on September 18th, which is a Saturday, at 8 a.m., Carteret County is participating in an international coastal cleanup, and it's called here the Carteret County Big Sweep. And in Pine Hill Shores, our iron steamer public access lot is a staging point for the Carteret County Big Sweep. So if anybody would like to participate in a beach cleanup effort on September 18th, to show up at the iron steamer at 8 o'clock, and you can pick a section of beach and help with cleanup. On October 9th, we have the Pine Hill Shores Fishing Tournament, and I believe there are applications available here at Town Hall and online, and the rain date for that is on October 10th. And our next meeting will be October 13th. That is the next meeting of the Pine Hill Shores Board of Commissioners. Is there anybody else have anything they'd like to, any announcements they'd like to make at this point? Okay, the next item on our agenda is the proclamation of the September 11th, 20th anniversary of 9/11 Day of Remembrance. And I'd like to just go up to the podium here and read this proclamation. And afterwards, I will ask all of you to join me in a moment of silence. This is the Town of Pine Mill Shores proclamation on the 20th anniversary of 9/11. Whereas in an unprovoked and senseless act of terrorism, 4 civilian aircraft were hijacked on September 11, 2001 and crashed in New York City, Pennsylvania, and the Pentagon, resulting in a momentous loss of innocent U.S. lives of all heritages. And whereas, while we still continue to recover from the loss of innocent lives, the spirit of the U.S. has been revitalized, giving way to expressions of patriotism. And whereas, inspired by the heroism of our nation's public service personnel, military service members, and countless volunteers, our nation found unity and strength. And whereas, from the tragedy of September 11, emerged a stronger nation, renewed by the spirit of national pride and a true love of country. And whereas Americans have also fought back against terror by choosing to overcome evil with good by loving their neighbors as they would like to be loved, contributing to relief efforts, and volunteering their time to aid those in need. Now therefore be it resolved that we, the Board of Commissioners of the Town of Pine Mill Shores, do hereby proclaim September 11, 2021 as the 20th anniversary of the attacks of 9/11 and the 9/11 National Day of Service and Remembrance in the Town of Pine Mill Shores. We also urge our citizens to recognize the heroism of firefighters, rescue and law enforcement personnel, military service members, and the many volunteers who responded to these tragic events with courage, selfless compassion, determination, and skill, and to remember the victims and innocent lives lost as a result of the tragic events on September 11, 2001. I would like to ask all of you to stand and join me for a moment of silence for our fallen heroes. Okay, thank you very much. That brings us to the public comment period. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Charlie Bracci, our town clerk, to present the comments one by one. Charlie, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know there were some people that wanted to speak online, so if you'd like to do so, just send me a message while I'm reading these, and I will get to you when I return to the computer. This first letter is from Treva Tyson. She writes, I would like to address the proposed survey regarding short-term rental housing. The county commissioners have actively been promoting Carteret County as a vacation destination. The tremendous increase in occupancy tax fees going to the county is a testament to their success. The plans for the new interstate undoubtedly will also increase traffic coming to Carteret, the county. Currently, there is not enough vacation housing for all the tourists who want to come here. We are a victim of our own success at promoting Carteret County. I suggest that we deal with the reality of increased tourism traffic by using some of the occupancy tax to solve some of the problems caused by traffic congestion and the products of the Happy Dilemma. One of the biggest issues for everyone has been increased amount of garbage. Currently, the county commissioners spend 50% of the occupancy tax on beach tree nourishment and 50% on promotion of tourism. It would be very useful if we could have taxes diverted for the consequences of having more tourists here. I live on Dogwood Court and I'm here 75% of the time as a second homeowner. My neighbors across the street rent in the summer and live in their house for the rest of the time. My next door neighbors beside me rent all year, and diagonally across the street, they rent all year. There are also short-term rentals through a rental company or through Airbnb. I am fully aware of all the consequences of having renting neighbors. I found the survey to be extremely biased. There is no opportunity or reflection that having newcomers visits the adds to the vitality here. Obviously, the tax dollars they bring and the jobs they support are important. You cannot promote the county as a tourist destination and not give people a place to stay overnight. Previously, when PKA proposed limits on renting as a part of the covenant changes, there was a strong reaction against the proposed HOA changes. I think you would be hard pressed to find a coastal community that has successfully implemented any limitations on short-term rentals. I have been a property owner in Carteret County for almost 30 years. I grew up in North Carolina. Coming to the beach and renting a house has always been something that is a family-oriented activity. When you own property at the beach, you know that somebody might be renting down the road, or if you've been around for a while. I strongly suggest that you consider a survey that is more balanced and professionally prepared. Asking if you have been disrupted by rental property use is hardly a fair question. I would like the survey to include questions on how to address the increased tourist interest and consequences of that. How to manage the garbage and traffic, etc., is what needs to be addressed. Tourists are going to come. Sincerely, Trey Tyson.
That's interesting.
What was the address?
It's on Dogwood Circle. I don't have the exact address.
Is there any, before we go on to the next one, is there any commissioner here who would like to address these concerns we just heard?
I guess my only concern or your question is, I don't understand why she thinks it's biased. That's all my understanding is. I don't know where it came from.
The survey is a little slanted
Toward what way?
toward, do you believe the short-term rentals affect property values? Do you believe they factor in security?
Well, yes or no? I didn't say it's biased, but I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. Larry?
I just want to comment on the occupancy tax use issue. That is codified and regulated by the state, so we do not have any option to do anything with the occupancy taxes other than as they're doing right now. It would take legislative change at the state level to do something different.
Okay, if there's no other comments, let's go on to the next public.
Next letter is from Suzanne Wheatcraft. This is in regard to the proposed Living Shoreline project. Frankly, I think this is a great idea because we continue to direct more and more stormwater from our streets into the sound and canal, which is not great for the ecosystem. And the Living Shoreline provides a home for many things like oysters, who can filter and clean up to 50 gallons a day. Plus the birds love walking on them at low tide and eating little crunchy things. And we see all kinds of shrimp and crabs in the water. I gotta believe they will make fishing better too. Oh, and they seem to be creating more land behind themselves. This would be nice if/when there's a storm. Mainly their intended job is to absorb wave energy, which helps prevent shoreline erosion and even protects existing seawalls. Plus, they'd be welcome to come and see how the shoreline goes under our dock and provides an opening for canoe, kayak, etc. Thank you for coming up with this exciting idea. Suzanne Wheatcraft.
Okay, thank you, Susan. Does anybody have anything they'd like to add? I think she said a lot. Okay, moving on.
This Next letter is from Warren Nash and Roberta Spillane at 288 Ramsey Drive. To the Board of Commissioners, this is a response to the email Robert Cox, President of PKA, DTD, September 6, 2021, concerning the proposal for the Soundside Living Shoreline. This proposal is absurd. First, when we bought our house in PKS, we looked at many homes, including canal and soundfront homes. Part of our decision not to buy on the sound was the cost of maintenance, including cost of bulkheading and possible storm damage. Responsible homeowners do that. We look at the cost of maintenance. It is not the responsibilities of those who do not live on the sound to pay for maintaining the property of those who do. It is theirs. Likewise, we would not expect to ask our neighbors to pay for the re-roof of our house or replace our driveway. Will Mr. Cox and the other waterfront homeowners share 12.5% of their property with the rest of us, since we'd be paying for it? We doubt it. Additionally, this will establish the precedent that those of us without waterfront properties will be responsible for waterfront property maintenance. So who's next? Canal property owners? They also have bulkheads and waterfront maintenance as well. The email refers to other entities. What are other entities? Will we be paying for shoreline maintenance of the country club, the Trinity Center, or else will be coming to the taxpayer through? It is obvious this proposal will raise our taxes. By how much is unclear by the limited information provided in Mr. Cox's email. The email states that town resources fund $1,500 for every 100 feet. That's tax money. It seems un-American to expect that 87.5% of someone else's shoreline maintenance will be paid for by your neighbors, either through town or federal taxes. Increasing taxes in turn affect the resale and marketability of our property. We doubt that anyone is signing up to pay more taxes, especially in this questionable economy and recession. Next, the government has no money. It sounds like such a good deal to the federal government to pay for a grant, but it is actually the taxpayer who will pay. And no grant has ever been without strings attached. What are the trailing obligations of the grant? What will the government hold over our heads? Perhaps we'll be required to erect low-income housing. Maybe there will be an eminent domain fiasco that occurred on a previous PKS grant that sounded like such a good deal. The fact is that we don't know and cannot know with the limited information provided to us. Sounds kind of shady, doesn't it? Other issues not addressed in the email would be considered. What exactly is planned? What is included in the good deal for Soundfront homeowners? How would these so-called improvements last? Will the waterfront homeowners come back to their neighborhood after every storm? Bottom line is, this proposal should not even be considered. It doesn't pass the smell test on any level. It seems like a good deal for those fortunate enough to live on the sound, but it's a raw deal for the rest of us. Warren Nash and Roberta Spillane, 288 Ramsey Drive.
I'd just like to thank Mr. Nash for his comments. He brought up some good points, but I think it's a little premature to discuss the living shoreline as a proposal. The Board of Commissioners hasn't even discussed this yet, so there really is no proposal at this time. Or if there is, it's very, very well, it's very undefined. But nevertheless, there were some good points made. Anybody else have anything to say on that? Okay.
Not other than we spend town money for beach renourishment from time to time and sand fencing, things like that. So it's not unusual that we do things to make the community better.
Next letter is from BJ Peter. My short answer is not only a strong not in favor, but also a great surprise for the short turnaround for comments on something so significant. Here are some reasons why I'm not in favor of this proposal being the living shoreline. When there is a grant, there are usually trailing obligations attached, such as requirements for beach accesses in exchange for sand. You have not explained if there are any or whether such additional obligations could somehow be attached later. Has someone read all the grant terms and related regulations? If you don't explain that now, you're asking for a blind vote. You do not disclose the possible increases in taxes for residents. You do not disclose possible increase of association dues. I am sure members of the country club and other entities might have similar concerns. This item concerns me for our town as a whole. Perhaps research and thought has been given to it, but I guess I must have missed a specific plan of action. With rising sea level concerns, should our town be putting money aside for possible impact to infrastructure, such as our water system and distribution? Does the town need to spend money for engineering study in order to develop a specific strategy instead of improving the bulkheads owned by the entities and individuals? This item should be obvious. If we help landowners on the Sound with bulkhead costs, why in the world would owners on the canal not ask for a similar project, thus putting additional costs on their neighbors? I remember years ago, Marjorie Green then had a home on Oakleaf just past Sycamore going towards Brock Basin and did shoreline protective work, I am sure at her own expense. You might ask the current owners to let you look at what is done and whether it is lasted, which brings me to my next concern. How long will this project work and how often will homeowners request assistance? I think neighbors are helping to increase the property values of these 45 owners while decreasing the marketability of my home on the other side of the street. I don't want to assume any part of their maintenance responsibility. Last but not least, I realize that the amount of our budget reserve account is a public item governed by NC law. However, I defer to the staff and board to determine if it would really cover a bad storm with significant damage to the town. If I recall correctly, FEMA requires the town to pay first, then reimburses the town. From a cash flow perspective, is PKS covers for such a situation? As you are thinking of spending money for sidewalks and individual maintenance responsibilities and the country club's cost, I think that there should be a pause to think of that question. I thank you in advance for consideration of these concerns. BJ Peter.
Does anybody have anything they'd like to say to BJ at this point? Okay. Next.
This next letter is from John Clark. My name is John Clark and I live at 165 La Valley Drive with my wife, Ann. We are not on the Sound, but we do live on the PKS waterway. We do believe strongly that providing any effective, scientifically supported protection for the shoreline is warranted. The entrances at the east and west sides of the waterway have had significant water flow during a hurricane, and there has been something in the Sound to attenuate the wave action. It would also be a welcomed addition. Lot owners on the west entrance experienced significant bulkhead loss and overwash during Florence. And any named storm may not cause visible damage to property, but could certainly weaken bulkhead structures and start the erosion process for an eventual collapse. I'm in favor of the town taking action to get funding to build a living shoreline. John Clark.
Anybody have anything they'd like to say? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. See, we may have someone online.
Raise your hand.
Your request online, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you very much. That's the end of our first public comment period. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. And I would propose that we visit each item separately, have a brief discussion and propose any needed changes, if there are any. And then at the very end, take just one vote on the consent agenda as amended in its entirety. If that's okay with everybody.
Sounds good.
I guess not say as amended or as proposed.
Oh, as
proposed.
proposed, yeah.
Okay.
The first item on the consent agenda is the Red Knot resolution. I'll attempt to give a C-Spot run quick summary of what the issue is here. The Red Knot rufa is a small shorebird, kind of like the,
Piping.
what's the plover? The piping plover bird. And it migrates every year from the tip of South America and Argentina and the Tierra del Fuego to the very far northern parts of North America. In 2014, it was specified as an endangered species, which triggered a search for a mandatory critical habitat to protect the Red Knot rufa. Now, 7 years later, the National U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has come up with a critical habitat designation that covers all of Carteret County oceanfront shoreline including Bogue Banks. It includes the Cape Lookout National Seashore and the entire shoreline of Cape Hatteras, or about 150 miles of North Carolina oceanfront beaches. And this is in spite of the fact that relatively few red-knot rufas are actually spotted anywhere in North Carolina. They primarily feed on the eggs of horseshoe crabs, which are most prevalent today in New Jersey and the Delmarva Peninsula, which covers Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. And according to the National Park Service here, there are, during migratory season, there are 200 or 300 of these birds occasionally seen near the Cape Lookout National Seashore. We don't know of any report of red-knot rufa overnighting or being spotted on Bogue Banks. Now, the Carteret County Board of Commissioners is working with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to try and get them to amend their, I guess, their procedures, their system for designating critical habitat. What they appear to have done is just taken a blunderbuss and covered a wide area rather than trying to determine and focus in on what actual critical habitats areas will be. And, you know, if all of the Carteret County Ocean Seashore was designated critical habitat, it would affect our ability to do things like beach nourishment, sand fencing, stormwater control, probably living shorelines as well. And it would could also impact the National Flood Insurance Program, all our shallow water dredging programs, including in our canal, and a number of things like that. So what the county is really asking the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to do is to go back to the drawing board and try and focus the critical habitat more on those areas that are really used by the red-knot rufa in its annual migration. And I think they would really like the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to use the same map as they did for the piping plover. And the piping plover, I think, has some critical habitat in the Hammocks Beach State Park. There's a few little areas on the Point and Emerald Isle. I think there's some small areas in Fort Macon, and then some areas on the Cape Lookout Seashore. But by and large, all of Bogue Banks is excluded from that critical habitat. And I think that's all they're asking. That's what they're asking for. And they've asked us as a town to support their effort in doing this discussion.
I strongly support the resolution opposing as it's written. Strongly support. That's why I wanted to take it up. But that's okay.
The question for me is like, why not just the Cape Lookout National Seashore? Why did they add Bogue Banks into this? That's the $1 million question.
That's
Okay.
$1 million.
I thought maybe they had a reason.
I'll say it here.
I strongly support this resolution also. It appears to me that rather than doing their work, they just took a simple approach, a broad brush approach, and say, well, this is along the coast. Maybe they're there, without pinpointing the exact location.
And if it's a critical habitat, I mean, they could actually limit beachgoers. They could limit traffic on the beach. Larry.
The Beach Commission, brought this up to the county, and as John said, the county's going forward, and the Beach Commission has written a template for us, which we're using for all the towns, which the towns are putting forth and using to let them know that we don't think it's such a good idea. Rudy also has written a template for individuals, Brian, and you have a copy of that. And I would just ask that you email all the individuals on our list that we have, and maybe in slightly simpler words than Rudy has in his template for them. Tell them to please support this and send it off to the appropriate people. So there's sort of more volume of
Yeah,
support.
good idea.
Okay, anything else?
Nope.
All right, now, our next item on our consent agenda is the meeting minutes from the August 11th, 2021 Board of Commissioners meeting. Are there any comments or corrections on those meeting minutes? Anyone? Phil?
A little clarification on page 9 of our packet, under the new business A. 5 lines up from the bottom, the line that starts says sides of Highway 58. I would suggest at the end of that line where it says the engineers, you say Commissioner Connect raised concerns that the engineers limitation of liability. Add the word limitation of liability. Okay. Seems inconsistent. And then the next sentence, Neil Whitford responded that since there is no chance of liability, that's not what he said. He said there's little chance of liability. So I propose making those, 2 changes.
Anybody, everybody okay with that?
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. All right, anybody else? No. Okay. Next item on the agenda is the volunteer board appointments. The chair and commissioner liaison to the Community Appearance Commission is recommending the reappointment of Mary McDonald and Steve Shepard to the Community Appearance Commission for 2-year terms each. And they're also recommending the appointment of Devan Barber as a new member of the CAC. And Devan Barber's volunteer application has been included in your package. Are there any comments on these recommendations?
I have a question.
Yes.
Is that, make that a full complement?
I believe there may be one other vacancy on the CAC. I'm not positive.
Is there?
My understanding is that grade 10, and this will make 9.
It's my understanding also that there's still another slot available.
But they don't have to, is that the,
No,
could be
up to.
between 8 to 10 or
It's up to 10.
up to 10, so it is not a
Doesn't
minimum.
have to be done.
Does anyone else express an interest?
Yes.
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 Okay, I just think it's unfair without taking a vote on all of them.
Well, we have before us today
3.
the recommendation from the chair and the commissioner liaison for these 3. We don't have another one before us right now. So
I
I'm
understand
not
that.
sure how we
Who's the
um,
liaison?
Just
could
leave my
circumvent
comment,
that process.
just leave that comment at what I made. I don't think it's reasonable.
Any other comments on that? Okay, the next issue is the yard waste truck financing proposal. We have a proposal here from BB&T, and it's a 1.8% loan over 7 years with no prepayment penalties or anything like that. And they're asking that we approve a resolution approving this financing proposal that they have made to us.
What did Julie have to do to get that interest rate?
I don't think we want to know.
It is a tax-free rate, so that counts for part of it.
Yeah.
Good job, Jim.
But it's actually more than we make on our money market funds.
Oh, yeah.
Excellent
job, Julie.
Okay. All right. Any more comments on that one?
No.
All right.
I'm certainly in favor of that, and it's a standard tax-free type loan with the standard documentation, which I'm familiar with. But it's a great rate.
The next item on the consent agenda is tax disclosures and releases. And it's our usual monthly report, only it's a bit longer this month. I think because Carteret County, in getting their tax bills out, discovered a whole lot of things that they sent us at the last minute. So are there any comments or questions about the tax discoveries and releases?
Yeah, it's a comment to be made about the definition, because I tried to pay my $1.52 and was told that anything under $5 or a certain amount, that they automatically statutorily don't accept the money.
Is that bill from us? Or from-
I read what was on the list and I went in with my $1.52 to pay for a boat or something.
Is your name, I didn't
Change?
see your name on
Yes,
here.
my name's in there, as well as some of yours.
Mine's an addition.
Well, I'm
It's
saying
assessment.
with the list, I'm just saying.
Anything under $5 is not, it's not pursued, because $1.52, we have some that are dollars that are under $5, it's not.
It's not worth doing the work, yeah.
I guess I was surprised when I wanted to voluntarily pay and I couldn't,
Take your dollar.
well, they wouldn't accept, I'll give you my $1.52.
We can remove your name from
I
the
had,
list.
and I had it in cash.
She takes cash.
Pennies, yeah, all pennies.
So you'd like us to remove your name from the list being forgiven?
Well, I believe
can be
in paying, I believe in paying whatever I owe.
Yeah.
And so I'm just saying, I found it interesting that government at any level would say that you couldn't pay, even if you voluntarily went to pay, what you owed. I find that interesting.
I think in the programming, when it's put in, it automatically moves out anything under the certain dollar amount. So that's why.
But I was just expressing that to
Yeah.
you.
But I think
Because I
from
received a
the,
comment already, oh, you don't pay your taxes. You know?
I think from the standpoint is the man hours to actually
No.
take
Yeah.
it doesn't.
Having been in government all my life, I understand their rationale. I still don't think it makes sense
Okay.
at any level if someone volunteers to pay. I'm not blaming anybody. I'm just saying from a federal standpoint on down, it's if you voluntarily go to pay, you can't pay. I just find that interesting, that's all.
Anybody else? Okay, moving right along. The next item on the consent agenda is another resolution. We had 3 of them tonight now. In opposition to the environmental budget provisions included in Senate Bill 105. And again, the C-Spot run version here is that in the Senate appropriations bill each year, a whole bunch of things get added at the very end that haven't really gone through committee or, both a House and Senate vote. And they're just proposals. They kind of get hung on there like a Christmas tree. And there are 2 provisions in this Senate appropriation bill. One that affects our ability to restrict, or it's a restriction on our ability to have tree ordinances and control our maritime forest canopy the way we would want to do it. And the second issue here has to do with our ability to regulate stormwater and riparian buffer requirements in the way we see fit. The addendum to this Senate appropriations bill would prohibit us from imposing any stormwater requirements that are not required by federal or state law. So federal or state law would become the least common denominator in both of these cases. And we think that these Christmas tree amendments really are counterintuitive and counterproductive to our efforts to promote coastal resiliency in our town and to protect our environment. So we're passing a resolution here that we will forward to our representatives and on to other people in Raleigh. Are there any questions or discussion of this one?
Good idea.
I'm totally in support of this. You know, I just can't understand the state taking away from the local municipalities, local government authorities, the right to regulate some of these items. You know, one size does not fit all. You know, what's important for Beach Town is entirely different from what's important in Charlotte or Raleigh or somewhere else, and what the issues are. So I'm totally in favor of this.
I might just suggest again, Brian, maybe, although you hate to hit them all at once, but maybe this is another one you want to try to get public support on.
No, I'm totally supportive.
Have a letter out.
Yeah, definitely, I got you.
And get people to put forward. Kind of support.
Okay, thank you very much.
Motion to approve the consent agenda that we just discussed.
Okay, with the change proposed by
Yeah, you just did one change.
Commissioner Connect.
I'll second. Right.
Go ahead.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the consent agenda and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Next up, town manager and staff reports.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to start off talking about the bids we received for our solid waste services. Coming from the RFP we've been discussing for several months. We received two bids as we sort of expected. One was from our current provider, GFL, and the other from Waste Removal, a local outfit out of Morehead City. This week we had separate meetings with both bidders. Intent being to flush out their actual proposals and make sure we're comparing apples to apples on both of their bid submissions. And we have that sorted out now. What I'd like to propose is this is significant enough. We have some time because we got the RFP out when we wanted to. I'd like to have a public service committee meeting on this. I'd just like a committee chop on this before I make a formal recommendation to the board, which would be no later than the October board meeting. And I may ask for a special meeting just for this purpose of approving the selection. So I'll be in touch with the public services committee, who is Clark and Bill on that, and probably going to try to do that next week.
I'm going to be out of town next week.
Okay, all right, I'll ask another commissioner, probably Larry, because he was involved in taking a look at some things early on. So we'll have that meeting next week, and then I'll have a recommendation to the board to follow again. May not wait till the October board meeting because we don't really need to, but
You'll give us a specific date sometime?
yes, I will do that.
Brian, if I may, since I'm going to be away next week, I'd like to see a copy of the proposals, whatever they are, so I could review them.
Yes,
Since I'm part of that committee.
I'll get you those. And just a heads up that one of the items coming out of this whole effort is at some point in either the October or November board meeting, Neil is going to have a ordinance change to recommendation. We have a solid waste ordinance, but generally it relates to have your trash out no later than time X and your cans picked up. We need, in order to have an exclusive contract with the provider, which we want, we need to have that in our code. So that will be forthcoming. So that's all I have on that one, John. Commissioners.
Solid waste. Okay, moving on.
Okay, the other major item here is FEMA excess funds. So last week we addressed some more questions from FEMA. This, I think it was our third round of questions from them. The kind of good news is that the questions focused primarily on environmental preservation issues, EHP, you recall that acronym from the beach projects, and it stands for Environmental Preservation. And they're almost exclusively concerned with cement where we're putting cement pads on the ground,
Generators?
both for generators and for Sunny's equipment building
Oh,
mainly.
yeah.
So what we're being told is once we clear these EHP hurdles, hopefully it'll be smooth sailing. And the purchase of the ladder truck and the radios hopefully will be straight bids because we're just buying things. But we're going to need particular emphasis on the two major construction related items being the roof at this building and the roof over at the PSB. And this is late news because we received the email late this afternoon. The proposed location of the public safety, the public services department, Sunny's outbuilding, back behind the dumpsters and the recycling carts would be in a special flood hazard area. Okay. It's not flood prone. We know that, but the indications we're getting is that they would require us, because it's FEMA money and they don't want to build in a floodplain, that they would require us to build to base flood elevation. And then of course we have a 2-foot freeboard here. That would be 10 feet. The elevation there is 7 feet. So we would need a 3-foot crawl space and all. So I'm meeting with the staff tomorrow morning at 8:30 to talk through this. And there's a possibility I might recommend to the board that we scratch that from the list and then find something else to do with that
So can-
150.
They won't let you put in vents?
No, they would. They would. I mean, we could potentially, put a more substantial, but it would increase cost,
Not the vent, you know what I'm talking about, where the flood water can just come in and out.
No, we could.
Okay.
We could have it, I imagine, any number of ways to get it
It's not an
above.
office, it's
Put
a,
it on stilts or put up.
because you got to get equipment in and out of it. It needs to be flat.
Yeah.
So
I would
we're
say
gonna have to explore that. So
the flood panels where they just collapse and the water just comes through and goes
yeah, I'm
back
sure there's a
out.
number, whether it be, a straight up, whether they're on pilings, whether it's something like that, whether it's, normal foundation and block for crawl space. I'm not sure, but we're going to talk about that tomorrow morning. But that's late, came in this afternoon from FEMA.
Crawl
so-
space would be a nightmare for equipment.
I agree. Well, we wouldn't put equipment in there. It would be to get the level where Sonny kept his stuff.
You got to get the equipment
I
up to
guess
it.
so.
Right.
You got to
Well, exactly.
get.
Heavy equipment too, Bill. Heavy equipment, so
Mm-hmm.
in some cases.
Would there be any advantage of moving it to the north a little bit?
Someplace else.
Is that higher?
Someplace else.
What about with the tennis courts? Or the dog park?
I mean, where the dog park is higher than where that is, by a couple of feet.
Okay, judging from my memory of the map, and we'll look at this tomorrow, I don't believe that would help us.
I haven't seen that.
Because if you imagine a bird's eye view of this building, it's special flood, it's the AE zone, special flood hazard area,
Is it
all
the
around
whole-
this building. So anywhere around here, we would face the same issue.
Where he wanted it originally, the water tower.
That's what we're going to talk about tomorrow morning. So
Okay.
What time is the meeting tomorrow?
8:30.
We still need it, don't we? I mean, it's still a good idea. So
If we're going to get all of that hazard mitigation type gear, additional pumps, a new backhoe, all those things that were on that list, then I think
so
we
an
need it.
alternate site is the answer then.
I don't think we can put it near the water tower because of the proximity to the.
Yeah, we have to look at the wellhead protection plan about those two areas. So I just don't have the answers right now, but somewhere else to avoid this particular
Yeah.
issue
Build
is
it
the
up like
answer.
a New England barn with a ramp going into the.
The ramp will be all the way to here to.
Can be done.
There's got to be someplace.
We're all builders at heart, obviously, here.
We just get a bunch of sand.
Okay, next thing.
Okay, I want to talk a little bit about COVID and the procedures we're doing here at town hall. So I want to make the board and everyone aware that we have mandatory testing in place for all staff. both in this building and in the other building. It'll turn out to be 2 to 3 tests per month for most of us. And they're the FDA approved rapid tests. And starting with tonight's meeting, all boards and commissions that meet at Town Hall will be tested as well. The testing is being administered by paramedics. And as we saw tonight, it's about 1 minute to test everyone and less than 10 minutes to get the results. So apologize about the inconvenience to come in a little early for meetings, but we thought it was a prudent thing to do. So as far as the staff who are not vaccinated, we have incentives in place for vaccination right now for the staff. And we'll see soon, because we have some dates that we hope to see it done with the results of that. And depending on those results, I'll see what the next steps will be, because we want to incentivize our staff to get vaccinated, and we're not there yet, quite frankly, and we need to try to get them to do that. So want everyone to know we're taking the Delta variant serious and doing what we can within reason. And testing of mandatory testing and all that is becoming very commonplace, at least in local government in North Carolina, from what I've seen in other places as well. So that's all I have there, John.
Comments on that?
Comment. I have no problem with incentives. But I think if we give incentives, the same incentive should be given to those that already got tested.
Right.
Already
Vaccinated.
I mean, I don't believe in paying somebody to get it, and the rest of us, other employees got it on their own. So they should get the same benefit.
Right. Yeah, I have that included in it.
Okay.
I guess I would just comment as a comment of support. In my mind, anyway, I think this is a serious thing that we need to pay attention to. And fairly close to my family, it's rather serious that you do whatever you can do to protect yourself. And from what I understand rather directly from health professional, EMT type of person, is that the newer variances are much easier for people, even who have been vaccinated, to carry. And we should take it seriously, in my personal opinion. I have a right for my opinion. There's other people have opinion to do whatever they want to do. But the potential that a person who has already been vaccinated can carry it and not know it is rather serious.
Right.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Anyone else?
Agree with that.
Just a couple quick updates on some lesser issues. I spoke to the PE doing our sidewalk report, and he's on track to have that work done within the time frame we specified. So we'll be talking about that, I'm sure, at the October meeting. I need to get on the ball and start movement on the as-built survey for phase 2, which I have not done yet. But I'll likely be asking the board, maybe not immediately when it's done, but later in the fiscal year. I did not, and this was my fault, I did not build that into the budget for the phase 2 project. So we need to have an as-built survey done, because 10 years from now, when folks are having issues or there's questions and all, we need to have that. So we're working right now on doing the same thing at Dayton Place as we did down at Ocean Glen on the far west. Strike that. As we did down at Qualls 4 or 5 months ago. That was a due out to you. We were going to wait till after the season. That would be permanent marking of the 5-foot path and keeping it clear. And then the last thing, I'd like to just plant a seed. It's going to be budget time before we know it, believe it or not.
No way.
One thing that with the phase 2 project in place is we still have monitoring wells, and they're useful, and the engineers found them very useful in the design of the project. We have monitoring wells at Myrtle and Laurel. And if you look at that next slide, you'll see a picture of the most recent monitoring well data. I would like to see if we could find a reasonably cost-effective way of getting remote reading of these monitoring wells. Right now, we're going out to these well sites with a laptop and plugging in a cord to a monitoring to the device. I'd like to see if, given technological advances, if there's a way we could use modern communication means to have that data come to town hall on demand.
Right.
Very similar. And the reason isn't because we don't want to walk out with a laptop. The reason is this would help us trigger pumping decisions.
Mhm.
The whole idea is if we can see these elevated water tables and we're tracking what weather is coming, when we tie all these things in together, we're already, as Clark knows, we're going to in place sea level synchronized poles at key spots on the golf course pond network, so that we can, actually see what's happening there. I would like to kind of tie this all in together. So again, just Charlie's looking into that, but I'll talk more about that in February when we review the CIP for next year. But that's all I have on my quick updates.
I just want to know who's monitoring all that. Is that you or Sonny?
Charlie actually does it.
Oh,
Charlie goes out with the
okay.
laptop and the
Okay.
cord and he plugs it in and he brings the data back and Erica puts it into this
Okay.
format, but she has it on spreadsheet, of course.
How often do you monitor?
We go out there once a month.
Oh, you do?
Right.
And then it dumps the whole month's worth of data on you?
60 days, I think you can up to. Yeah, you can go up to 60. So we could do it every 2 months, but often I want to see it after a rain event.
Yeah.
Which was this case. I want to see what those water tables look like. I wanted to see what that heavy rainfall we got.
Commissioner Edwards.
Could I suggest that in a date and place one with a permanent marking, that they be a little more permanent? I know surveyors don't like to put in the state type of permanent marker, concrete posts, they don't like to do that. But the one down there at Qualls was simply a reinforcement rod that Sonny had to put a plastic pipe over to have it last a little bit longer. Reinforcement rods with salt and everything don't last too long.
Okay.
And for some reason, I had trouble getting a surveyor to do it on my own property. They could put in a 4-foot one which is standard with a reinforcement rod in the middle and have it stick out to 5 inches. It would be noticeable and not deteriorate.
Yes. we
And
can do
the
that.
additional cost is relatively little compared to getting them out to do the survey.
Right.
But for some reason, they either don't want to use a post hole digger or whatever. They just don't want to do that. So if you could encourage that, I would think for the town, permanent markers would be more permanent. So I'd just like to encourage that.
Good idea, Clark.
Excuse me.
John, Mr. Mayor. Brian, I thought I heard you say Myrtle and Laurel. It's Myrtle and Yopon, isn't it?
It is Myrtle and Yopon. I missed it's Myrtle Court and essentially Hester Woods on Yopon.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you. Now, Manager Kramer. Next up, Julie Anderson, our Chief Financial Officer and Assistant Town Manager.
So just a few brief items to report on. So you did receive your tax bills in the mail.
Yay.
They were mailed August 20th and they were due September 1st. Interest doesn't begin to accrue until January, but we will take your money today or yesterday. But yes, that they did go out both towns. We had a little bit of delay due to the printing. And then like the mayor mentioned, there were some discoveries that were made after the fact. So some people have gotten some adjusted bills, but that's just the way it worked this year. Lightning strikes and insurance. We talked last month, I believe, about the lightning strikes that we had that, well, it put out one of these TVs. The other one was gone for other reasons. So what happens is the insurance would look at whether or not it was a single occurrence. And so if it was a single occurrence in this building, then instead of the TV being covered or a computer being covered as computer equipment and then the TV being covered as other, it would go under one claim and you would pay the highest deductible of whatever the components are.
So looking at what we had so far, the deductible would be $1,000. And then it's only been about $2,000. Stefan was able to make repairs to some things without it costing us a lot of money as far as computers go. So if I wanted to do an insurance claim, we would be paying the $1,000 deductible, and then we'd get reimbursed like $1,300. The only problem with a small claim like that is then it becomes part of our experience modifier when we go forward for rates, because you've made a claim. And so for a small amount like that, and if the insurance would say, well, was that really, I just don't know that it's worth it for that small amount of money. We've had in the past where we have actually, I think we had one where one of the wells was struck by lightning, and we definitely did an insurance claim for that because it knocked out, that one I think was closer to $5,000 at the time. So it's just a little bit of a insurance dance, so to speak, but that's how the lightning strike works. And then I received our draft audited financial statements. I received them last week, didn't have the opportunity last week to start reviewing them. I've printed them all today, and we'll start reviewing them. And then just a reminder, once the 30-day clock, I believe, as Paula mentioned, when she has to present to y'all within 30 days, starts from when she submits to the state. And it's basically accepted by the state. You know, the state's got to make sure that you have everything in it that you're supposed to have. So I'm hoping to get that back to her probably by midweek next week. I'm able to start reviewing those a little quicker as the years go on, but it's a lot to review. So that's where I'm thinking. So I would expect her to probably make our presentation at the October meeting. That just depends if the state treasurer's office is on schedule really for receiving and approving our report. But if it's not October, it'll be November. Or we might need a special meeting depending on the date that they accept. So, and we can always do her. So let me ask you this, because she drives from Hickory. So I would think a virtual anyways for anybody else. Now, I would think having her do a virtual presentation would be perfectly fine for our purposes. Do you not? I think that would be fine. You know, there's no need for, I think she does do a couple, like traditionally we'll do a couple towns on the same trip, but if she can avoid it, I think she'd rather avoid it.
I don't think we need a motion or
No,
anything.
I just wanted to ask you your
I'll
thoughts.
assume we'll have new TVs by then.
Or we could all go to.
Charlie's going to talk about that and get your
So
desires.
we'll have
Yes.
We'll have the
And we're
ability to do it.
You're going to look on your phone.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
She
Yeah.
tells us when the leaves are at their peak color.
Exactly, right?
Yeah, that's
We need to
good,
tell,
Charlie.
yes. And that's all I have. I have very few things this time.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Okay, next up, I believe, is Chief Baker. Chief Baker, are you on the line?
Yes, sir. Can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
I can hear you.
All right. So summer's over, and I guess most of the folks are headed home. But people are still going to the beach. You know, Hurricane Larry's floating around out there, way out in the Atlantic, but it don't matter if there's a hurricane in the Atlantic, whether it's close or not, riptides are going to be prevalent. So the first little point I had was, you know, summer's gone, the riptides are still there. This is mainly for resident folks that are still going to the beach and hanging out, and everybody, but you know, a lot more residents going to the beach and hanging out now that the tourism is down a little bit. Just know that riptides are still there, and just be careful, especially with Larry sitting out there in the Atlantic. Well, different Larry, not the one sitting at the end of the table right there. We know where that Larry's at. He's safe. It's the one floating around the Atlantic we're worried about. The Hurricane Shooting Gallery, like I said, Hurricane Larry, not C, is floating around out there right now, and usually this time of year it gets to be a shooting gallery. They start stacking up on us out there. Just be prepared and keep prepared. Know where your Rentier Pass is at always, and definitely have an evac plan in place where you're going to go. Maybe go ahead and have a hotel picked out, or just, you know, a town that you're going to head to. And like I always say, you know, get past Raleigh. I wouldn't stop before Burlington or Greensboro, honestly. Home safety inspections, we're still doing those, and actually got a little bit of interest in doing them, and we've done a few. Looking to do more. If you or neighbors or anybody else, wants to get this done, and it's just a walk through your house, check fire alarms, see placement of fire alarms, things like that. Just call the station and we can get it scheduled. Jesse's been handling a lot of that for us. Lastly, before I move slides, I didn't put it in here, but of course, ISO inspection is still coming. It's October 27th, and just trudging through a lot of paperwork. They changed a lot of things. No biggie, just a lot of paperwork and filling out stuff and gathering of information. But look good, as always. But that's been like a big focus for the station here, past bit, at least for me. That and COVID, I guess. Any questions on that, or Charlie, get the next one?
Commissioner Edwards.
I just have a comment, Chief. The other day when I was out at the beach and at Sidham, and I had a lot of good comments about your truck going by with the trailer and the CD wanted from a feeling better out there and patrolling. So I just wanted to give that back to you. Thank you very much for that.
I appreciate it. We try to we can't, police presence is out there always. Ryan does a good job of getting out there, and we're kind of bound to our station. We try to get out there a couple times a day and just make a pass up the beach. It depends if it's a couple of my shifts that are really big fishermen, which about all of them, they're probably checking the bait scene in the surf a lot of times. I always want to put this slide up. I can't harp on it enough. It's proven fire alarms save lives. We say, you need to check them monthly, but and you should be checking them, once a month. It's easy enough to do. Push a button. And time change is coming up, so that's what we want to tell people. Just go ahead and switch out the batteries in them, even if they're hardwired. Just go ahead and swap your batteries out, so they got fresh batteries. Fire extinguishers. This is one we're seeing some of the home inspections, that people really don't have in place, and it's not much. And like I say, there's no requirement for you to have it, but certainly best practice with a small kitchen fire or something like that, where you could stop at the stove instead of taking out the entire kitchen. But just a small, 2.5 pound, what we call ABC extinguisher, which will handle anything you go up against, except for metals, which you shouldn't have issue with in your house. Just keep in the kitchen or near the front door. Reason I say near the front door, if you got a place to hide it there, you can assess how dangerous it is to try to get it as you're standing toward the exit to the yard. And of course, any questions on any of this stuff, a lot of times, I won't put this out there too, if anybody else is listening, we get folks that they have old extinguishers they want to get rid of, they give them to us, and we'll just arbitrarily ask them, hey, you want to step out back here and set one off and spray it and see what it's like. And a lot of times they do, so they get to pull the pin and get a little quick lesson on using a fire extinguisher.
Chief, can I just a quick question on the small 2.5 pound ABC extinguisher? Where can you buy them, and about how much do they cost roughly?
They're cheap. You can get them most any Walmart, Lowe's, anything like that. And Dollar Tree probably has them, but I don't think they're more than $1. But the Kitty brand or whatever, the Kitty one's the main one. But yeah, they're probably less than $20. And it's simple to have in your house.
House supply. Lumber company.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions for Chief Baker?
Thank you, Chief.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chief.
Yes, sir. Going back to
Pinedale Shores Police Department, Chief Thompson, are you with us?
I am. Can everybody hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Good evening, everybody. First up, like Chief Baker said, summer's over. I just kind of wanted to highlight how much our officers have been spending on the beach this year compared to last year. So from May to August this year, we've done 363 beach patrols compared to that same time period, 219 last year. So they're really making an effort to be out there as much as possible and interacting with folks. And educate them on rip currents and some of the other ordinance issues like filling in holes and glass bottles on the beach. So really want to commend everybody for doing that. And really good partnership with the fire department, and they've been out a lot this year too. So I think that's tremendously contributed to the relatively, knock on wood, uneventful kind of ocean rescue season that we've had. So with summer being here or being over, everyone's kind of filtering back home. That's our second homeowner. So it's a good opportunity to remember that we do have a residential security check program where our officers will go by and check your home several times a week. You can either call our public safety building to get on the program or find the application on our town website and send that in. And we'd love to check your property and kind of help give you some peace of mind. And along that same line, we've also still got our home security survey program where Lieutenant Tellison will come out and kind of like what the fire department's doing from a fire perspective, we're doing from a crime prevention perspective, you know, just kind of giving you some tips and pointers on how to keep your home safe and maybe a little bit less of a target. And then the mayor's already kind of stole my thunder on the beach cleanup on September 18th. So I'll just reiterate that. We'll be out there with plenty of water and gloves and trash bags ready to help out everybody picking up the remnants of the summer left on the beach. And the last thing I've got that I didn't have a slide up here for, we just kind of locked it in today. We're doing another food donation drive for Martha's Mission during the month of October. So for the whole month of October, we'll be taking non-perishable food donations at the public safety building and getting that over to Martha's Mission in time for Thanksgiving.
Okay, are there any questions for Chief Thompson?
Just a comment and saying about beach patrol. It's very obvious that one's out for a couple of hours, and we certainly appreciate it. And I agree with your efforts to help make the beach much safer for both of you. Thank you.
Mayor, I've got a comment or a question really. I don't know if this, in whose department this belongs in, but we passed this ordinance about taking things off the beach this year that was left. Have we had any problem with that?
Good point.
No, so our early morning beach patrols, we've been catching a lot of those. And so what we do is our early morning beach patrol officer, you know, kind of passes it down to the next officer that's out there, which tents and canopies have been left up overnight. And so instead of going door to door and disturbing people early in the morning, we're kind of waiting to catch them out during the day when they're out on the beach. That's when we let them know about the ordinance, and we haven't had any issues. Everyone's been compliant, and once we explain the intent of the ordinance, everyone is appreciative and understanding of it.
Appreciate your answer. Just one last comment. It certainly must be tough to be a Cubs fan this year.
That was a low blow. I'll get you back later for that, Ted.
Okay, Chief Thompson,
Oh, the Braves.
I know.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is our public service department and our water department. Sonny Cunningham, are you there?
Yes, how you guys doing?
Okay, pretty good.
Yeah, everything's been going really good this summer. The fire department and the police department has been right on spot as always. They have, but yeah, they have. But the issue with the well the other day, not too bad. Could have been worse, and we took care of it, and we just keep going, right? Just keep going. Any questions on that?
No.
Good. Cool. And the next, every 3-year lead and copper samples were taken last week by specific residents in town. The houses had to be in between 1983 and 86, and have copper pipes with lead solder. The reason why I know this because I had to do every one of them back in 1988. Had to crawl into people's houses. It was like Indiana Jones stuff, but so next week we'll get it. It's true. A week or two we'll have the results, and I'll let you guys know next month what the results were. Any questions?
No. Okay.
And then we're making some money for Julie. We saw those hydrants and the valves that you guys graciously let me buy for the wells. So it looks like we're almost $1,000, $1,000 for the old rusty metal that we got rid of. They wasn't any good anyways, you guys. But everything went good. We got rid of them today, and now we're working to get everything ship shape. This is the time of year we try to get caught up and can keep everything right, you know? Any questions on this?
We just need to check with Julie where all the money's gone.
Yeah.
I see, if Jill needs to get the money, I mean, should be made on behalf of the town.
Thank you.
Say, I don't know why she doesn't need that. Clark, I don't know why she doesn't need your $1.50.
Yes.
I really know.
That's rusty money.
Ooh.
Okay.
And then the last one, I met with Sean Parks today and supposed to give us a quote for connecting that 6-inch discharge and 6-inch suction at Myrtle Court, that lift station. After that, when we have a substantial hurricane, we will make a substantial impact immediately. Before, we didn't have what we needed. Now we're going to get what we need, you know? Any questions on that?
Fill in the hole.
That's good work, Sonny. Excellent.
And thanks for you guys backing us up. We appreciate you.
Any other questions for Sonny here? Just really thank you for everything you did all summer. We had a lot of work done this summer, and you guys did a great job. Thank you.
Team effort, everybody. Thank you.
Flooding out of town.
Yeah.
All right, next up is Kevin Reed, our town planner. Kevin, are you with us?
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can, yes.
Great. It's always good to be with you. Good evening, everyone. First of all, just to recap some single-family landscape permit activity. We did issue one permit for the month of August. The CAC is going to conduct site visits for 2 more tomorrow at a special meeting, one at 116 Evergreen Lane and one at 121 Roosevelt Drive. Staff is continuing to receive a large number of single-family landscape permit applications, and we're currently processing applications for 520 Pelican Drive East, 117 Roosevelt Drive, 119 Roosevelt Drive, and 126 Evergreen Lane. And again, continue to see a great deal of interest in new construction throughout town. I told the planning board last month, I think it's only the backlog of surveyors and engineers workload that is keeping us from processing and receiving more applications. And I think we'll continue with robust new single-family construction for the upcoming fiscal year. Just touch briefly on census numbers that were released. Preliminary census counts for the town of PKS indicated there were 1,388 persons residing in Pine Knoll Shores in 2020. That's an increase from 2010 when our population, according to the census, was 1,338. That increase is 3.7%. And just as a side note, Carteret County, countywide, saw an increase of 1.8% in its population from 2010 to 2020. And I believe there are some numbers out there that also indicate that the western part of the county probably grew faster than the remainder of the county. That's all I have on that slide.
For Kevin on that?
Just shocked that it's so small.
Well, the
Given
census
2020.
took place on April 1st of 2020, and that was before, I think, the impact of the pandemic on the relocation of people.
But it went on, what my wife was doing, it went on for another 3 months.
Did it? So, I think we'll be surprised next time they update those numbers. But that's just my own opinion. Okay, Kevin, moving on.
Yes, sir. Just to update you on the Unified Development Ordinance process, town staff did send out new RFPs last Friday, September 3rd. They went to hundreds of private and public sector planners on the planners listserv, as well as to approximately 6 planning firms. The revised RFPs are due back to town no later than noon on Friday, September the 24th. You recall last month you appointed a UDO review team. After the 24th, it's anticipated the review team will go through the submissions, select a consultant for having discussions with the contract, and then once we can get a suitable contract with the desired consultant, have that reviewed by the town attorney with the goal of having something before the Board of Commissioners consideration at your November meeting.
Are there any questions for Kevin on the UDO? Okay, moving on.
Yes, sir. The last slide I have from the planner's perspective is, lack of a better phrase, I'll classify as downspout management. As you know, we currently have regulations for stormwater management that addresses the retention of stormwater containment on site when any new impervious surface is added. You see this not only for new constructions, but also for additions and other things that add any amount of impervious surface. When that's done, the town code does require an engineered stormwater plan to indicate how the water is going to remain on site. The downfall of that is prior to adopting stormwater regulations townwide, we have a large amount of existing development that wasn't subject to those stormwater regulations. So it's probably accurate to assume that a large percentage of the town's existing impervious surface doesn't have stormwater controls. You can look at older homes and see no downspouts or downspouts that simply dump out into a yard or dump out in a driveway. And there aren't really any regulations or code requirements that address these existing impervious surfaces and institute anything that I would classify as kind of downspout control. So what I've been tasked with doing and will be doing over the next several months is looking at educational opportunities really geared towards existing impervious surfaces in homes that don't have any stormwater controls. And the idea is to create some type of downspout management program and possibly incentives for retrofitting existing impervious surfaces so we can do a better job of managing stormwater on site for which there is no management plan in place, particularly on single family residential lots. I really don't have any idea at this time what the educational opportunity might be or the incentives, but I'm exploring things with the North Carolina Coastal Federation and the training folks at Pivers Island about what might be out there for some training opportunities for folks. Be happy to answer any questions from the planner's perspective before we move on to the building inspector.
Yeah, I have one question, Kevin. Do you have any idea when those regulations first went into effect? Because it seems to me when I was on the planning board, they were in effect in 06. So that's what I'm wondering.
Yeah, Clark, that's a good question. I went back into the town code this morning and looked at the section that pertains to single family residential development and stormwater management. And the most recent or oldest, if you will, ordinance that I saw adopted was 2015, in October of 2015. I know there were wholesale changes put in place, and that was done I believe I know it was done at the October meeting in 2015. I don't know what was in place prior to that, but I do know that did include substantial requirements for single family construction based on that date to now.
I'll check my old records because
should have been before.
I remember we had a lot of discussion on that back in 06, 07. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Knapp.
Kevin, I understand that we don't have current regulations, but I may have raised this last month. Is it possible we could adopt a regulation of some sort upon health and safety issues to regulate the problems or correct the problems that we have, such as requiring downspouts to be directed off the street and so forth?
I would defer to the attorney on this, but it's my understanding, Mr. Connect, that if there are regulations put in place that would impact that, and it's put in our zoning ordinance, that we could not make it retroactive in our zoning ordinance. Those existing ones would have to be grandfathered, but I could be wrong there. But it's my understanding there's some legal hurdle in going back to existing development, making them comply to a new standard you've established today.
But sometimes you can do things upon health and safety issue that affects existing properties. That's what I'm inquiring whether it can be done or regulated.
You can't put people,
Kevin, I have a question for you. I'm a little confused with the difference between stormwater and just the regulation that we got to be able to take the first 2 inches of rainfall into account for impervious surface. That doesn't sort of control stormwater when you got to catch the first couple inches of rain that hits the impervious surface?
Yes, sir. That's absolutely intention of the stormwater regulations is to capture that 2-inch storm event, and hopefully, and the stormwater plans are required to show how that 2-inch event is going to retain one site, and that post-development runoff would not exceed pre-development runoff, and that's one of the requirements that the engineer signs off on when it comes to new construction or adding any impervious surface for which there is a required plan.
It's new construction though. That's the,
No, But that,
It's,
when did that ordinance, I thought that ordinance went into effect before 2015.
it may have, I don't have the historical perspective on that, only that the research that I showed the 2015, and that was for new impervious surface, and a 2-inch rain event, but I could do some research and find out exactly when, there were initial changes made for stormwater controls in PKS.
I think the issue, if I may, Mayor and Commissioners, is great. We've had control of 2 inches of stormwater in 24 hours in place for years. I mean, all the changes we've made, stormwater ordinance, stormwater regulation, have kept that in place. The issue, and Kevin's responded to something I tasked him with from a discussion we had 2 meetings ago, is, yeah, I mean, people have, they have submitted those plans and such, but they're all through town on homes that may be 20 or 30 years old. There's downspouts pointing to, remember, I think you brought it up, there's downspouts pointing down driveways and all. We were looking at mainly, mainly as a water quality issue.
Right.
You know, and as Phil says, maybe a health and safety issue. The idea isn't you're violating the 2 inches and 24 hours stormwater plan written into the construction. It's that right now there's downspouts pointing down the driveways through town. You're right, and you somehow prove that violates the 2 hours and 24 hours, then that's easy to address. But we're concerned with others that we can't show that. We just see downspouts pointing down.
But some have clearly been changed.
I put a paragraph in the shoreline about this.
Yeah, I know you did. That was, yeah, I know you did.
I said I would. Okay. Anything else on downspouts?
no.
Okay, Kevin.
Yes, sir. From a building inspector perspective, for the month of August, issued and approved 14 building permits, total value of $5,666,637. Issued 32 mechanical permits, 6 electrical permits, 1 plumbing permit. Total value of all permits processed was $5,878,000. Issued 29 tree removal permits for the removal of a total of 82 trees, and Jim performed a total of 95 inspections for the month of August.
Okay, is there any questions for Kevin? Okay.
Is there any idea of the issued 29 tree removal permits for 82 trees? How many had a condition that tree be replaced? Or a net difference?
I do not know that.
Is that marked on the applications now, or when the CAC goes out and approves a permit, do they make a notation about replacement? I wonder.
There are, I will say, Mr. Mayor, members of the board, there are occasions when the CAC will condition the removal of a tree on a replacement tree, or they will suggest it. And sometimes it's simply a situation where they do neither, but we could certainly begin tracking that aspect of the permitting process to see what a net loss might be out there. We're doing it for new construction now.
Okay. Larry.
Kevin, in the dollar value you show the permits, it might be useful to show the revenues we received from that. Besides just saying there's, $5 million worth of work going on, what did we get for granting those permits?
So Kevin and I, we've spoken about this. Part of on my dashboard, you'll have so the month of August, I have building permits on there.
Okay.
Because in the permit software, there's a timing of when the permit is issued and all of that might make those two numbers not match.
Choose your numbers.
Your number, because the permit's just
Okay.
varies, but yeah.
Yours is fine. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions, thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
We'll talk to you later. Okay, next up is our town clerk, Charlie Rocci.
I have to make sure I'm on camera.
Got a blue shirt on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So last month, we approved the sale of two public service items, the 2008 dump trailer and the 2008 Chevy Silverado. Those auctions closed last Friday. The dump trailer sold for $3,600. We would receive $3,200 minus tax. And the truck sold for about $7,250, and we would receive about $6,450 minus tax.
You're a good salesman.
Career as a car salesman.
Who's this money go to?
Charlie's.
You're supposed to have a green blouse on, Julie.
So last week, Melissa Behrman sent me the first draft of the easements for the Acorn Court residents for their stormwater project. Those draft easements have been sent to the residents and our engineer, and we're going to look at any revisions that need to be made in addition to Bree's design that will be coming in hopefully early next week. And lastly, a couple weeks ago, I went up to Emerald Isle to take a look at their boardroom and considering some things that we need to do and this opportunity with no TVs in the corners right now of what direction the commissioners would like to go in with this project. I also met with our consultant who helped us build the AV system to help with some technical issues I was having before. And a lot of those issues have been resolved now. And now it's a question of what we want to do going forward with our displays. So you can see in these pictures on the slides, there's TVs along the walls of the Emerald Isle building. And important note, those are consumer grade TVs, commercial grade TVs, not consumer. So consideration we're going to want to have is if we want to use commercial TVs in here or really just monitors instead of TVs at all. Some of the key differences is commercial TV, you're going to pay more upfront, but you're going to have a longer warranty, and the warranty will help what we're trying to do. It won't have any of the consumer issues with that. They're often more durable and last longer. They would offer the ability for us to connect our TVs with the system over there. So the whole system is in sync. You press one button and everything cuts on. And that would use a Cat6 transmitter to connect. It would serve pretty much as a computer monitor that would work to that computer right there. Some of the challenges we have in here, we have a lot of art on the walls and not the easiest way to figure out where we want those TVs. We could keep them up in the corners, or if we wanted to do some sort of rollout where you guys could see, maybe up here. Really, that's at your discretion.
So are you still just doing the PowerPoint on the TV? Is that still the plan? Are you thinking of something else, of like streaming people in, like if a board member's missing?
We could do both of those. That would really work with both the TV and a monitor. It would certainly be much easier on a monitor, but if we could do both slides, and if we wanted to have someone on video on the TV, we could keep them up as well.
So we need to be able to see it, I think.
Yeah, like at Emerald Isle in their boardroom, we have our beach commission meeting there. The people who are attending the meeting online come across on top, and then the PowerPoints and the presentations are all right below.
Like picture in picture. Yeah.
That's what I'm doing right now on the system. I'm up in the corner and everyone can see the slide underneath me. An option also is if we wanted to move maybe some commissioner pictures around here, we could put something on that back wall.
That's what I was thinking.
So we have one.
And then it would be closer to, and then maybe you're right, one for the public.
Yeah. Maybe both corners of that wall.
You'll move the commissioners to the closet? No. Just kidding.
I would recommend, rather than that wall, I put it out in the vestibule.
Oh, yeah.
We've had occasions, not frequent, but we've had occasions where we had overfill and Jason wanted to have seating outside, out there, like you remember the rezoning issue.
Right.
Four rooms full. We put the TVs in the corner 7 or 8 years ago actually it was Julie's idea because, you know, we were looking at maps and things and all, and the folks out here didn't have the benefit of seeing what y'all were seeing, you know? So, you know, the Emerald Isle system is awesome, and a lot of that is, you know, helpful for Rudy's very detailed technical briefs. I kind of take the view, do whatever the board wants, but we're really doing it for the public sitting up here, I think, right?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
yeah. You know, 29 months, maybe the briefs will get more technical, but for right now.
29 months, okay, yeah.
But the idea is there's going to be same slides, same maps, same graphics, same numbers on those. So unless you folks don't want to turn 45 degrees and do that, I'd recommend these two corners for the public and then maybe one out there. But it's my 2 cents.
I guess my only concern is, is that the only way we're gonna be using it is for the public? Or do we see?
I used them for webinars. I wanted 6 or 7 staff members. They'll be connected to the internet, obviously, through the webinar group. Lead webinars, such, and we pull a table up in front of the TV.
Right there in front of it. Okay.
That makes sense.
Kevin used them too for some training and planning with the planning board.
Yes.
Right.
Are there any other questions or comments for Charlie? Bill?
You know, I like the idea of the cameras or the TVs where they're in the corner for the public. But personally, I would rather have one for ourselves on a wall over there looking straight at it than trying to turn around and look at,
Absolutely.
you know, those corner ones.
Or,
The one straight ahead, you know.
how do you,
Or we get those
In a
nice
reasonable
swivel chairs that Julie was going to buy for us.
So we're talking about 4 instead of 3, right?
so I have a question. Would y'all be okay with not having the PowerPoint presentation printed out and just up and still have all the material? I would be fine with that. Because you still got all your stuff you're reading through. It's just the presentation that you don't need a copy of.
Don't get frisky with Julie's rusty fire hydrant. No need.
Into the truck and trailer now.
It's just something to think about, because if we're looking at it, then I don't feel like I need this paper copy.
But if some commissioner's not here though.
I really like.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Capacity to be able to see it.
Yeah.
I do too. I think.
Do y'all
this
too?
is really-
I'm trying to save some trees here.
Is there a commissioners committee who would have responsibility for this item?
Administration.
Administration?
Yeah.
For like
administration.
the commercial
We'll do it.
Why
TVs
don't
and
we have
stuff
the administration committee get
Okay.
together with Charlie?
and figure it out. Yeah,
Sounds good. That's me and
great
All right.
idea.
If there's no other
That-
questions for Charlie, one more?
I just have one thing, irrelevant in a way, Charlie, but I noticed there isn't an easy way on the website, which I know has nothing to do with this, to zero in. If I was Joe Q citizen, I wanted to go and look at the planning board and makeup and so forth. There's nothing there except going to old minutes or something like that. And I guess if we, it seems to me as a town, it's not directed to you, but more in general, as a town, if we want people to be able to participate, at least things that they participate to get permits and so forth, they ought to be able to do that. That's all on that website. Just a little.
John, I've got a question. Are you done? Charlie, I don't know if this is in your area or Brian's, but where are we with the shoreline distribution problem?
Your garage.
It was a folding.
Yeah, right.
That's solved.
Okay.
Eastern Seals is taking it over.
Great. No, I had not heard
However,
that.
we'll probably see a request for.
I haven't read those.
$200,000 a month.
Great, thank you.
Anything else?
Thank you, Charlie. That's something I can definitely make happen, Clark. Just a little thing on the website, little
I
information.
didn't
about
make a
it.
big deal of it, but it was just an observation from the outside. That's all.
That's something we can make happen. Thank you.
Okay, at this point, we're up to agenda item number 9. I'd like to entertain a motion to go into public hearing to discuss amendments to chapter 74 and 66.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, we're in public hearing, and at this point in time, I'd like to call on our town planner, Kevin Reed, to give us a brief overview of the amendments that we're talking about.
Hey, good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Commissioners. You're asked tonight to consider amendments to Chapter 74 zoning and Chapter 66 subdivisions of the town code in order to make the town's regulations and procedures consistent with 160D of the North Carolina General Statutes. 160D broadly refers to the updating of the North Carolina statutes that contain the rules for how jurisdictions can regulate development through areas such as zoning and subdivisions. Previously, these statutes were divided into two sections, Chapter 153A for counties and Chapter 168 for cities and towns. And after many years, the General Assembly consolidated these chapters into a new chapter for local jurisdictions so that the planning legislation at the state level could be organized in a little bit more of a coherent manner. Chapter 160D also clarifies some areas of authority and modernizes state rules for planning and development. You may recall that following your off-site earlier this year, you asked that I and the town attorney, Neil Whitford, proceed with 160D changes. They were to be in place by July 1st. They obviously are not because you're considering tonight. But the message we heard consistently from the School of Government all along was there was no 160D police out there, if you will. And it's not uncommon now to find other communities who still haven't reached 160D compliance. But thanks to the work that Neil did on our behalf, we do have changes proposed tonight for both Chapter 74 and Chapter 66. The Planning Board considered these amendments at its August 24th meeting, and following its discussion, voted unanimously to recommend the Board of Commissioners that the amendments be approved. The Planning Board also found the amendments to be consistent with the town's core camera land use plan. We've got the amendments in the agenda package tonight. All changes are highlighted. Typically, as I've done in the past, text that's being deleted is shown in the strike-through format. Text that's being added is shown in the underlined format. And I can't stress again that the substantive changes that are made here throughout Chapter 74 and Chapter 66 are all required by 160D and session law passed in 2019 by the North Carolina General Assembly. I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have about the amendments now or at the conclusion of the public hearing.
We will be having a discussion amongst ourselves about these amendments, I think, under new business. But at this point in time, I would like to ask the general public if anyone has any comments on these proposed amendments. Charlie, do we have any comments?
John Adam who's raised his hand. I believe that means he wants to speak. He would like to speak. He has the floor. John Adams, can you hear me? You've raised your hand. Are you indicating that you'd like to make a comment?
Mr. Adams, are you there?
That was a mistake. I'm sorry.
Oh, no worries.
Okay, thank you.
Just need to go to the restroom.
Okay. These are very detailed green eyeshade kind of amendments, but I'd like to entertain a motion at this point in time to come out of the public hearing.
So second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. We're up to item number 10, new business. And the first item under new business is the amendments to Chapter 74 and 66 that we just had the public hearing on. Are there any comments or questions on the part of any of our commissioners here?
We don't have any choice.
Good job, yeah.
Commissioner Connect and Commissioner Edwards, please.
Yeah, I know these are obviously very detailed, Kevin. Have you and our solicitor both reviewed these thoroughly, and are you both satisfied that we now comply with state law?
Yes, sir. I feel very comfortable that the effort that Neil's put forward for us and my understanding of what was required by 160D, that we've touched all the bases in both our subdivision and zoning ordinance relative to becoming 160D compliant.
So you're satisfied also then from planning standpoint?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Commissioner Edwards. My only question, thanks, Bill, was what Bill asked. But I tried to read through them and got rather tired. So I guess one question I'd ask from a planning standpoint, do you see anything other than bringing in compliance to state law? Was there any other changes that were at all significant? I know that's a loaded, at all significance loaded. But is there anything other than changing a date or adding legislative to the definition or something like that, Kevin? So substantial difference from what you could do before with the two.
Not really, Clark. Obviously, there's clarification on what a hearing is, whether it's a legislative hearing or a quasi judicial hearing. They've sort of taken public hearing out and sort of classified those tier hearings in that extent. There's also some changes relative. There's a couple of definitions being added, and then there's some changes relative to what it means to be vested in a development project. But from a wider range planning perspective, no substantive changes other than those necessary to bring us into compliance with state code.
Okay, so now it doesn't give permission for anybody to go flood the road that they couldn't flood before, right? Oops.
And I think we're gonna have another chance at this whole thing. Once we come into compliance with 160D, then we're going to do our unified development ordinance, and we're gonna revisit all this stuff one more time. Commissioner Connect.
I have an additional question, Kevin. Going through this, I noticed there were some changes with respect to the criteria to be used in granting variances. Some of that appeared to be different. Do you want to comment on that?
Yes, sir, I can. Let me get to that section very quickly in the changes. So the North Carolina general statutes previously set forward what they would consider to be a hardship, if you will, or the test that has to be passed. And there are changes in that respect, in that the language has been boiled down a bit. Previously, there were 9 or 10 or so, if you will, things that need to be met. That was clarified into 4 bullet points in the general statutes that simply talks about, again, A is very similar to the existing language in that unnecessary hardship would result from a strict application of the ordinance. Again, that the hardship is a result of conditions that are peculiar to the property and resulting from personal circumstances as well as hardships, and that a variance can be granted when to make a reasonable accommodation under the Fair Housing Housing Act. That's a bit of a change. And then the last 2 points of the hardship did not result from actions taken by the applicant or the owner, and the request is consistent. Those, I think in spirit and intent are similar in the way they're worded to what's currently in the North Carolina general statute.
It seems to me that they lessened their severity of, when you can grant a hardship, made it easier for a variance. It appears to me.
I think that's a reasonable conclusion, Mr. Connect, that maybe the test now, if you will, doesn't quite seem so onerous under the general statutes.
Another interpretation of that could be that traditionally, I believe, hardship meant not just here, so generally hardship in relationship to the land, not the person's personal hardship. And this brings in personal hardship as a major,
correct,
right?
That's correct. They wanted to clarify that the hardship should be peculiar to the land and the property and its size, and not necessarily something that's shared personally or by the general neighborhood.
Okay, so I guess I misinterpreted it then. I thought that it opened it up from just a piece of land to certain personal things could be considered hardship. But you're saying it sticks to land.
Yes, it specifically says that if you have a hardship that's resulting from personal circumstances, as well as resulting from conditions that are common in the neighborhood or the general public, that those may not be considered as a basis for a variance.
Not, okay, I misread that. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? At this point,
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve amendments to chapter 74 and 66. Is there any further discussion? No. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed, it's unanimous. Next item on the agenda is the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities Grant. And I'll ask Town Manager Brian Kramer to introduce this.
Yes, Mayor, Board, last week we were made aware, actually we received from the county that FEMA submitted a notice of funding opportunity, i.e. their initial announcement for the grant, the BRIC grant, BRIC. That's going to be administered in North Carolina by North Carolina Emergency Management, specifically their Department of Public Safety. So the Department of Public Safety is soliciting letters of interest for qualifying groups to apply, and we qualify as local government. Specifically, what I'm asking for tonight is authorization to submit a letter of interest. That is not authorization. I'm not requesting authorization to apply for the grant because we're not there yet. They're having first this LOI submission before they select folks who they believe would be eligible for the grant. But as far as what this submission would, I'd ask them to consider the project in town for the living shoreline. And I want to emphasize that what we're talking about is addressing shoreline erosion on our northern shores. Similar conceptually in my mind to all the effort we've done over the decades for storm mitigation on the ocean side. This project potentially could help us with shoreline erosion on the sound side. The concept of a living shoreline incorporates a lot of natural elements. We know this because we just did one on the end of Veterans Park. And effectively what it does is create a buffer to absorb wave energy. And as I told several of the folks who made public comments against this tonight, I talked to both of them. They're all good folks. I ask everyone to remember what our shoreline looked like after Irene in 2011. I'm trying to find a photo that looks due east or due west from a certain point. It really impacted our sound side, and that was a Cat 1. That was a Cat 1 that made impact up near Cape Lookout. So we took the south winds, the northerly winds coming from the sound, and then, envision, God forbid it ever happens, something like Ida happens similar, and the potential for destruction on the sound side. So that was the idea. That's the idea of a living shoreline, preventing shoreline erosion and storm protection. The Coastal Federation is the regional leader in promoting and assisting in the design of this. And if we were to go forward, and I had a conference call with their director, Todd Miller, Lexia Weaver, who helped us put in the shoreline here at Veterans Park, to see if they thought it had merit here in town, and they certainly believed it did. There's several properties in town right now who already have living shorelines installed. We have the one at the entrance to Veterans Park, right across that waterway that comes into Town Hall. Suzanne and Andy Wheatcraft put one in. They're gaining land, by the way. There's one in place at the Trinity Center. And in the agenda packet, you can see that there's 3 properties in town that were that had a living shoreline. That's between 248 and 252 Oakleaf. At least one, Marge Green, and I know this because I met with her to talk about it. That was installed with a grant program that no longer exists with the Coastal Federation. They exist in town right now, and they're effective. They're effective based on what we've seen so far at the Wheatcraft property, and the fact that those ones on Oakleaf have survived some pretty significant storm events. If we were to proceed with this, the actual applicant is the state, North Carolina Department of Public Safety. We would be considered a sub-applicant. The key into this is partnerships formed. And right now, of course, the Coastal Federation is excited about partnering with us. We would probably be partnering with the State Parks and Recreation Department because the aquarium director indicated that they're interested, and potentially the diocese if the Trinity Center wants to expand theirs down there. The projects to meet the grant specifications need to be nature-based, which this of course is, and it has to provide both for partnerships and public outreach. And because of the timeline of this, the Coastal Federation has agreed to help us put on, unfortunately, given the times, it'll likely be online, but within the next 3 weeks, I'm planning on a town hall style meeting to describe really what the system would entail here in Pine Knoll Shores. The project also needs to provide for risk reduction from natural disasters, and I think that's the primary reason we would pursue this. And it needs to consider elements from climate change and sea level rise, which are, federal government buzzwords on that, but we would certainly try to tie that in. The state's getting 56 million of the 1 billion federal dollars that are going for this. The cost share of the program would be 75 federal, 25 non-federal. That would be the split. Just today, I listened to another webinar. Our chances of receiving the grant would be increased if we would increase that non-federal share even as much as 1 percentage point. So we might consider that, but right now it's a 75-25. And the grant timeline is, as you see on page 62 of the agenda packet. And the reason, again, as I explained to the folks on phone today, we were presented with this last week. These LOIs are due on the 1st, and this is the only meeting between then. We would be submitting the the formal application to NCDPS in late November on their timeline now, right prior to Turkey Day. And that they would turn around, they being the state, would submit, if they accept our letter of interest, that is, they would be submitting the applications up to the federal government in early January. The initial concept in PKS, as far as funding and such as this, we had a conference call last week. I invited all of every Soundfront stakeholder in the town, west to east, very quickly. Trinity Center, Begans Reach, RNA, meaning aquarium in the state, McGinnis Point, PKA, Bogue Pines, and the Country Club, and Pikes Cove, excuse me. I invited all of them on a conference call, and essentially went through much of the same information from this. So I'll let them know what we're thinking and that this would be presented tonight. But I told them, and this was based off a recommendation from Todd Miller, actually, that we have this as a voluntary program, that we don't try to do all 4.5 miles townwide in one swoop. That we offer those entities I just mentioned, and for PKA and Pikesco, it would be the individual homeowners being on a volunteer basis, not the homeowner association. So I'd offer that a way to approach this to have the homeowners have some skin in the game, so to speak, would be that the town and the homeowner split that 25% non-federal share. Okay. We could potentially have the homeowners provide a bit more to get over that 75-25 to get us additional grant points. But right now that's a model that works. The Coastal Federation says a 100-foot wide parcel, which is not everywhere, but it's kind of normal on the Sound, would be about $12,000. So the non-federal share would be $3,000. So splitting that between the homeowner and the town. And then we'd figure out a similar cost share if we're dealing with a homeowner association. Pikesco, for instance, has 2 parks, and they indicated they'd be interested in that for that reason. So what I'm recommending is that we approach this incrementally, and $3.2 million was the dollar figure I came up with that would fund at this very early stage roughly half the town. You know, a large chunk of that would go away if the state would not want to pony up the non-federal share for the RNA.
Right.
If, you know, we receive no interest from any of the PKA Pikesco homeowners, that would be, would likely go down. I put on page 62, that's what's on the Sound, if anyone's interested. We have 116 single-family homes. I won't read them all off, but there's quite a few stakeholders on the Sound.
Right.
And the idea is we would do it incrementally and submit on this grant cycle. So again, that's an estimate of roughly half the town. We would offer it on a first-come, first-served basis if we thought that would be the right way to go. The success of the program involves a significant amount of public outreach, as I mentioned, which will start with this meeting I hope to have with the Coastal Federation in the next couple of weeks. We receive interest to date, not commitment, but Beacons Reach and McGinnis Point are very interested. The Beacons Reach homeowner associations immediately adjacent to their marina, which are Westports, I believe.
Yes.
They're very interested. I'm sure there's others in Beacons Reach, but they're the ones that came up on the call and seemed interested. The aquarium I mentioned is interested. I received an email, but then they weren't on my Friday call from the Trinity Center saying interested, but we'll see. And I spoke to the general manager of the country club, and they characterized as we're interested. PKA came on board in the conference call and said they'd like to see a lot more information. Of course, PKA, the association, has no property on the Sound. Okay, it's all their members with individual, so we really wouldn't be dealing with them. Not the case with the other entities, however. I'd suggest we put in the letter of interest. I want to repeat, this doesn't commit us to anything. And if we don't like what we hear as we explore this further, then we don't do it. But if we don't get this letter of interest in, we wouldn't even be considered. This grant cycle, we'd wait another year. So
I just have one question.
That's questions or comments let's start down here and work to the right.
I'm in favor, but I think it's an excellent idea. It's not much difference in what we did on the beach. We've got to protect this island on both sides. So I'm in favor.
I have a serious concern about the payments scale of the town paying for some of it versus the individual homeowner. The beach makes great sense. Everybody uses the beach. Nobody but that homeowner uses the front of that home. And I don't know if it's fair to the rest of the town, as that gentleman brought up in his discussion earlier, to have the town contribute to certain individuals along there. If it's 100% on the homeowner and grant money, that's fine. But I don't know that the town should get involved in spending money for that situation. We don't control that land. It's not public use land. That's my concern.
So we do not need to specify the 25, we don't need to specify the non-federal share in this letter of interest. So that internal decision about whether or not we would have the homeowner pay the full 25% with a private entity where we want to split, we don't need that for that letter of interest.
I understand that, but what I'm saying is if that's what makes it fly, we need to decide up front if we want to bother with this, is my point. I hate to go down the road and then at the end have it crash for this particular, reason. Maybe enough people and board members want it to go and it'll go. But if they want to put the onus on the homeowner, I think you would get buy-in for sure by all the associations, the big groups that have something on the land front, and they'll pay whatever it takes to get it done. But individual homeowners, my gut feel 25% of them might go for it, if that. In my opinion, it's going to limit the use of the land in front of the property, their water in front of their property compared to what they have now, clear access as far as they want. I looked at the shoreline we did over here, and with the wall of shells out there and the grasses before it, it really takes away that being a beachfront for them. But some don't care, some, will care. But that's just my thought. I don't think it's a town expense.
I'd just like to say, I think it's an interesting concept to explore. And like you said, it's at this point a letter of intent. It's really not a proposal or a project or a program.
Not even that, John. It's not a letter of intent, it's a letter of interest.
And I agree with some things Larry said, and I'm wondering how many individual homeowners along the sound would actually go for it. I mean, a lot of second homeowners are, it's like another expense, maybe I don't need it. But then there are other places along, the sound, like McNeil Park, for example, with the canal,
right,
the channel right there. There's no way you could possibly even entertain
couldn't block it.
or a living shoreline in front of McNeil Park, but Garner Park, yes. I mean, I can see things like that. So we don't know how many people would be interested or how this thing would function and help us out in terms of storm protection, and until we do some further explanation. Or
and that's all we're doing.
Exploration. Excuse me.
Exploration, yeah.
Exploration. For sure.
I 15 years ago was opposed to, took the position for myself concerning the ocean. I disagree with Larry very honestly, that I took the similar position that away from the parks, that's the individual's property. It's not anybody else's. And where the beach was, if it was 30 feet back, it was 30 feet back. So be it. That's where the beach was. I was convinced and changed my mind based upon value and long-term value to the neighbor and all that. I think we should at least do the first step. There's 2 or 3 issues that I've heard from people online and others about, if I don't need it, why should I do it? Well, that's true if you have children and you don't have children. You all pay for the education system. I have to pay a lot more now than I did when I had children in school, and my parents paid a lot less than I did when they had children in school. So that has a long-term history, and I don't think that argument is particularly valid. I have seen what, with the event that you talked about, what happens with a Category 1. And indeed, that can affect a lot of people. However, I think it's strategically maybe not blaming anybody, but a mistake that we really ought to go to the homeowners directly. I don't think the association, and I'm going to get dissed for this, but that's life. I don't think PKA or PISCO as an organization should control in any way what individual homeowners want to do on the sound side. Because I think it will be different in different cases.
They won't.
No, I know they won't, except they're the ones, the homeowners haven't really gotten the information. Only, right? Only PISCO and PKA has gotten it.
That's what the meeting you're talking about.
No, I understand. So we haven't heard from them. That's my only point. We haven't heard from them. But part of the argument, the phone calls I got, why are we supporting, quote, I won't name them all, but different organizations? And I said, based on what I had read, it was for everyone, it would have equal access. So that wasn't a valid issue. The one in front of Marge Green's, I'm very familiar with because that happened the lot next door early on when it was first being discussed, was owned by a relative of mine. So we actually went on it and gave permission to be able to get to it and so forth. That has been miraculous. And Marge Green's in front of her house and next door has really been miraculous how that's stabilized. Because it was before that, every year, not just hurricane year, every year, a little bit was going away. The change of access, Larry, totally correct. You give up something to get something. I mean, we saw out here at this property, what, 10 years ago, it was a good 12 feet further out than it is now, more than that. In fact, it was a beautiful potential to be able to put a walkway down to the right and go out, if you can get through the mosquitoes during the summer, to go out and wade and so forth. But the town has lost a good 10, 15 feet, and I don't know how many square feet. So I think we should proceed and then make sure to be aware of trailing obligations and minimize those, or if they get to be too much, pull the plug. But I think it all fits in with FEMA type of money. We're apparently going with sea level rise and all that issue, and I don't want to get into the social political part of that at this point. And I think we would be, I think the only responsible thing to do is to proceed on down the road and see where it takes us.
I agree that we should submit the letter of interest, at this point in time.
Yeah.
It's a no-brainer. We're not committed to anything, but from what you've already done, we've already had some people express an interest, or Beacon Street, for example, they got condos, or, some on the beach up there, or the sound side, which have suffered some significant damage. And I can see where they very well may be interested to protect those condos, up there.
Perfectly.
I can see where the country club might be interested, because that whole sound front affects the golf course at times. I don't know what my position is yet regarding whether we should pay the fifth or half of the 25% or not. That doesn't need to be decided now. If the property owners want to take advantage of it, well, at least give them the opportunity.
No reason for us.
At this point in time, then we can look into what the other requirements are, upkeep, maintenance, and so forth. But let's apply for it, and then we can make a decision whether we want to contribute anything toward it, or we'll let the property owner do it. But if we don't apply, the property owners can't even potentially contribute, to it.
And again, I'm sorry to keep repeating this, but we're not applying for anything.
We're just
telling the
doing a
state
letter of
we're
interest.
Letter of
being an
intent.
applicant for the.
Without doing that,
Right.
we've lost a whole possibility.
So I started with a question, which don't let me forget, I got a question for you, but now I've got comments. It's not just about damage in building properties. It is about water quality. And I think when people talk about, well, I'm not going to benefit from this and don't get access, but how many of us are paddleboarding out there? How many people are swimming on that sandbar from McNeil Park? how many people are kayaking, clamming behind the aquarium, all of that stuff. And that is, you say people are accessing the sound, and they do have access to these living shorelines because your access goes up to the high water mark, and it's all going to be under there. They're fishing back there and stuff. So I don't see it as a private property issue. I see it as a water quality issue, and we're all using that resource and access. My real question, though, is why the living shoreline? When you got the notification of the grant, were there other ideas swirling in your head, or was this one just, hey, Coastal Federation said this is?
No, I'll take blame for this. It was not credit, blame on this. The whole point of this is resiliency, and I think when we look at the potential for storm surge damage, storm damage reduction, as they call on the beach, this is, I believe, the best option you have. And the buzzwords they had of nature-based. They're not looking for people who want to buy pumps or trucks.
They want nature-based.
Matter of fact, they specifically said you won't get a grant for a generator because it burns fuel. So, they're clearly zeroing in on.
And it's got to have to do with sea level rise. It can't be planting trees, or it has to be.
No, they did not say that. The briefing I took from the state folks said it needs to be nature-based and consider impacts of climate change and sea level rise.
So what else could you do?
And I'm with Clark. I don't want to dive down in that political. I'm just thinking of protection of the town.
Right.
And simply the effort we put in since 2001 to strengthen that beach, the tens of millions of dollars, and for a reasonable cost. And as I told one of the folks who made public comment, I'm not saying for a minute it's free money. It's still our tax money, whether or not it's town or federal or state money. But I think it's potentially for the town, dollar for dollar, a good method to deal with storm protection.
Well,
I think we all need to remember what we saw in Irene.
Yeah.
Our sound side was hammered in a category 1.
Yep.
And if we were to have something more severe and
I'll make a motion that we allow him to submit the letter of interest.
Letter of interest.
I just want to make sure I said it right.
Motion by Commissioner Durham, a second by Commissioner Edwards. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous. Please submit the letter of interest. Thank you. Okay, our final item on the agenda tonight is a short-term rental survey. And I'll ask our town planner, Kevin Reed, to introduce that issue for us.
He's back.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, sir, I am. You may recall at your August meeting, the Board of Commissioners asked the Planning Board to look at the topic of short-term rentals and how they can be regulated in North Carolina. At the Planning Board's August 24th meeting, I made a presentation to the Planning Board on regulation of short-term rentals and what exactly the town can do from that perspective. And after hearing the presentation and talking about the issue, the Planning Board formed a subcommittee and appointed Michelle Powers and Ken Rzuski to work with myself and Charlie Rachi to develop a survey to gauge the community's perception and thoughts on short-term rentals in Pine North Shores. Again, there's no commitment made by the Planning Board to move forward with any regulations. They simply wanted to figure out, do we even have a problem in town? And if so, what's the nature of that problem that pertains to short-term rentals? So I would like briefly to go through the presentation that I gave to the Planning Board so you have some context for that. So Charlie, if you could pull up the first slide. Next slide, please.
Shoot, we're supposed to
So the short-term rentals are subject to limits on residential inspections, permitting, and registration. And the reason I start with that statement is you'll hear comments a lot of times that there needs to be registration programs for short-term rentals. They need to register with the town. They need to have inspections. They need to go through a myriad of things to make sure that they meet health and safety standards. There are limitations, again, on short-term rentals and inspections, and that was clarified in 2019 under the Vacation Rental Act when the North Carolina General Assembly said that short-term rentals are subject to limitations on periodic inspections and rental permitting requirements. Next slide, please. So vacation rental, that's the rental of a residential property for vacation, leisure, or recreation purposes for fewer than 90 days by a person who has a place of residence elsewhere which they intend to return. I should clarify that that's not a 90-day limitation in any calendar year period or any certain period. It's just if you lease for less than 90 days on any one lease, you're considered to be, under North Carolina law, partaking in a vacation rental. Residential properties, an apartment, a condominium, a single-family home, a townhouse, a cottage, or other property that's devoted to residential use or occupancy by one or more persons for a definite or indefinite period of time. Next slide, please, Charles. So initially, residential rental inspection programs arose primarily because of housing code regulations and enforcement, and it focused on urban areas, and it focused on areas where there are large concentrations of rental housing. And so with the limitations under Senate Law 219, basically periodic inspections are limited. You can only inspect property when it's reasonable cost to do so, and for safe, unsanitary, otherwise hazardous conditions. You can only do so in accordance with the Fire Prevention Code, and you can do so in accordance with specific regulations for specific inspections in designated blighted areas. Again, these type of inspections do not apply to vacation rentals, but only apply to the residential rental property inspection program. Next slide. Permitting fees for vacation rentals, you can't require for a registration of a rental property with the local government to obtain a permit or permission to lease it or rent it. You can't require an enrollment in a government program in order to obtain a certificate of occupancy. You can't levy a tax that's not also levied against other commercial or residential properties. You can't make a violation of a residential registration ordinance punishable as a criminal offense. You cannot require the owner or manager of a residential rental property to submit to an inspection before receiving utility service from a local government. Next slide. So while there are limitations on what you can do from a community's perspective, the one powerful tool that all communities have in North Carolina, and it certainly is applicable in the case of short-term rentals, is zoning. Zoning can be used as a regulatory tool, and that is typically done by defining what a short-term rental is. Here's an example of a definition of a whole house rental. It means the rental or lease of an attached or detached residential dwelling unit, including the rental of an accessory dwelling unit for compensation for fewer than 30 consecutive days. So if you define that type of land use in your ordinance or another definition for short-term rental, then you do have the ability to regulate it. And you may limit short-term rentals to certain zoning districts. So you can define it as a use, and you can say, okay, here's the places in town where we think short-term rentals are appropriate based on zoning. Next slide, please. Zoning regulations can also have specific development standards for short-term rentals. You can require signage. You can require, in the case of a short-term rental that's defined as a homestay, that the resident be on site. You can require short-term rentals to get a zoning permit. You can't require an annual permit or renewal, but you can require them to get a zoning permit. And zoning controls for short-term rentals can't regulate ownership or require the owner to ride on site unless it is something defined as a homestay, which is a homestay is a short-term rental in which the owner lives there all the time and rents out rooms, which is a little different than the typical vacation rental you see here on Vogue Bags. And if you regulate through zoning and you put short-term rental regulations in place, you can have a period in which existing ones are grandfathered, and they may be given a time period to comply with the new development regulations. Next slide, please. Short-term rentals are subject to occupancy tax, and that includes taxes on the rental fee, taxes for other charges, damages, extra persons, linens, pet fees, reservation fees, smoking fees. You have a heated pool and you charge for the pool heater. Anything that is basically on the short-term rental bill, if you will, is subject to the occupancy tax. The liability for that tax falls with the retailer or the owner of the short-term rental to remit that to the jurisdiction, the county, or the facilitator in the case of Airbnb or someone like that, or in the case of a rental agent, if there's a local rental company. Next slide, please. Just a bit of background. I know this information is a little dated, but to give you an idea, Airbnb, which is probably one of the more popular platforms out there, in 2018, their gross revenue in North Carolina was $200 million in short-term rentals. The issue that local governments struggle with is that occupancy taxes are remitted, but they're done in a lump sum manner, and they're not really given any detail in most cases on the properties and the rental dates. And so it's kind of difficult at times for communities that are receiving occupancy tax revenue to marry up that with a particular use and a particular unit and understand if they're getting their fair share of the tax. There was apparently an agreement struck between the North Carolina Department of Revenue and Airbnb in 2015 that is confidential, and the details of that haven't been released. And basically, it does not require tax collectors to be given any detail other than what the Department of Revenue agreement says, and that is to the short-term rental platform, if you will, just remit your tax fees to the county as required by law. Next slide, please. So after presenting that information to the planning board, we posed a few questions to the planning board as well, and that is there a problem or problems with short-term rentals in Pine Knoll Shores? And if so, can we identify those specific problem or problems? If there are problems, can they be addressed with land use regulation? Is zoning the way to go? Are there other things that can be put in place that will address the activity of short-term rentals while not regulating short-term rentals? And if there are regulations, again, to be in place, do the regulations need to address land use concerns via zoning? So, what you have before you tonight is a draft of the work of the subcommittee. The planning board felt that they needed to understand if there was a problem before they started trying to define the problem or address a solution to the problem. And so we have before you tonight the brief survey. Is 10 questions. I'm not a survey expert. Thanks with Charlie's assistance and obviously the input with Michelle and Ken. We've tried to put together what we think is somewhat of a neutral survey, if you will. And the intent is for have this available for anyone who's a property owner in Pine Knoll Shores to respond to.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's open it up for discussion and comments. Commissioner Durham, please.
So you're just going to post this online and let anybody just come and take the survey? Is that the goal?
There's Charlie can talk maybe on the more specifics, but the idea is to send a link, obviously, to our to the people who are on our email list. But the idea is to get as much widespread input as possible from the community.
I honestly, I guess I'll start with this question number 2. I mean, that to me is like subjective. I mean, can't we get an objective on whether it's increased or not in the past 5 years? Because I mean, why does that question matter in a survey to the public? Why wouldn't you just go get that numbers and have that?
Well, I don't know that we can actually tell what the numbers are in Pine Knoll Shores, and that's the issue. Short-term rentals, if you go on any platform for short-term rentals, they're categorized by zip code. And we share a zip code with Atlantic Beach. So when you pull up short-term rentals on AirDNA for 28512, you get probably 700 short-term rentals. And in reality, there may be 100 or so in Pine Knoll Shores, maybe more, I don't know. And in some of those platforms, you can't even tell which address it is. So my thought process with this question, and I can't speak to the other members of the subcommittee, but my thought process was, can we gauge perception, if you will, among people in Pine Knoll Shores? And that's what's intended to do is do they believe that activity has increased? I think it has, but we felt like that was a fair question to ask.
So you could get a 50-50 response kind of too.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Then you know, the perception is perception. Alicia?
I guess maybe like the 5 and 6. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of on the fence about those. I think when you say, how do you feel about living about a short-term rental, that those kind of fit into that scenario. And I'm wondering if you're leaning people towards security, because I would be like, I wouldn't have thought of personal security until I read that question. I'm thinking, when I think short-term rental, I'm thinking noise, trash. But then I read that and I'm like, well, yeah, maybe.
Maybe quality of life or some other words.
Just knowing where you're at.
I just don't like, I don't know. I don't, it doesn't bother me that bad.
With COVID too?
Personal security, to me, it's like, I don't know. I feel like it's leading, the whole survey to me as I read it, is leading to people to say, no, I don't want to, I guess. And I'm not sure how to I'm not going to spend, the next 30 minutes trying to figure out how to reword the whole survey.
Commissioner,
I tend to agree with Alicia on number 2, the necessity for it. It doesn't, whether or not we regulate in some manner to the limit extent we can, really has no bearing in whether the public thinks it's increased or not. It's a decision whether we feel it's necessary to regulate, regardless of what the public thinks is whether it's more or less. So I don't see where that question adds any value to what we're trying to find out. My only other comment is on number 5, I would just add another option. You rate living near short-term affects property values, yes, no, do not. Add one unknown. People may not know. Just rather than answering yes or no, they're just an unknown there.
unknown, don't know.
Or no opinion, or something like that. So I'd be in favor of taking number 2 out. The part leave it in there, but I don't see where it helps us anyway.
All right, thank you.
No, the only benefit, sorry.
I'm working this way, but you want to respond?
Yeah, I was going to say the only benefit I see to that is that it gives you, as John said, an indication of perception of the people in town, if they feel this is a growing activity or stagnant activity or not. This might be interesting to see if we think there's a lot more of it going on. I think it has increased considerably with Airbnb and all that, Airbnb and all that stuff coming up. And it's almost a no-brainer, actually.
Yeah, I think we know it.
Yeah, I think so.
I think it's a no-brainer, actually.
Perception.
Yeah, so it probably doesn't make any difference whether it's happening there or not. Yeah. Either way.
Commissioner Edwards?
Well, I don't see any substantial difficulty in any of these. Since number 2 is drawn such attention, having spent a good deal of time, about 12 miles from a large university town, and I realize the basics are somewhat different. However, certainly the towns that were closest and had the most impact knew they were having more impact. And the ones that were further away as the impact developed knew whether they were getting more impact or not. So, I mean, I think it would be interesting to find out whether it's not really just the general public, but our people who are homeowners in town think there have been more or not.
I don't see nothing wrong with it.
I know there are some people who, and I've done a few calls too, who are intentionally acquiring property to be rentals, very sensitive about that. And my personal observation is trying to get under the wire. I don't know what wire, because there's no wire up. As far as I know, no wire of tension being put up. So I understand sensitivities both ways. Anything else I think would be suppositions. I don't think we've reached a lot of problems yet.
So before we go, I'd just like to say a few words. I think the subcommittee to put this together did a very good job. And it's short, really concise. I think number 4, have you ever been disrupted by short-term rentals in Vinyl Shores? It's interesting, especially when you put that in conjunction with number 7, which of the following might be a concern regarding short-term rental. And those are all the typical things I think we think of. So it would be interesting to see how many people say no, and then they fill out all the ones back here. But, I mean, it's I think it's well done. And I think it would give us a good idea of how people think about short-term rentals. I mean, we have a lot of them, and there may not be anything we can do about them, but it'll give us some more information.
I have a question for you, Kevin. Back on page 18 of your slides, the second item on short-term rentals says may require short-term rentals to obtain a zoning permit, but may not require an annual permit or renewal. Does that mean there could be a one-time fee to get a zoning permit? I mean, if we zone the whole town for short-term rentals, well, it is now. It's no difference. Anybody can do it. Can we then charge him to get a zoning permit to run that business?
Yes, sir. You have an opportunity not only for short-term rentals, but for any use in town to require a zoning permit and to levy a fee for a zoning permit as well.
Okay.
It's a one-time fee is what he's.
Yeah, one time.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
And also then we'd have a record of where they are.
Absolutely.
Short-term rentals are.
Clark,
My turn?
did you say, anybody have any comments on what Larry said?
No.
I just want to follow up on number 4. I think he mentioned 4, or somebody did. Have you ever been disrupted by? I don't like the term disrupted. I would say adversely affected. I think that's what they're meaning.
I think that's right.
Yeah, effective would be a better word, absolutely.
What's disrupted mean?
That's negative to start with.
Ever been impacted or
Adversely.
or because that's all one-sided too.
Just say
3 and 4, there's a beginning of the sentence, there's a B there.
Yeah.
all of it.
I think those are just typos.
Yeah.
No, it's just the way it came out for now.
That's Charlie's accent.
I tried to remove it and then as soon as I printed it, it came back. I'll figure out what's going on with that. No excuse.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think there's a question missing here that's critical, and do you live in a single family home or do you live in a condominium? And there's a major difference in how it's going to play out. If you go to number 5, for example, if you live in a condominium that does not permit short-term rentals, and a lot of them have it, you lower your sales price on that condominium significantly over somebody that can rent it. If you get into that kind of thing all the way down the line, it's important to know people who live in condominiums full time, and I think a lot of our condominiums have, just a few people living in them, and they're going to have more complaints about the short-term rentals because they're every week and there's more noise and that kind of thing than opposed to a single family home. But other than that, I don't have much problem with it.
Yeah.
I think that question is critical.
Probably put that as like question number 2 or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right in front. Good thinking. Okay, is there anybody would like to make a comment on whether they think we should go with the survey now or not?
John, can I just make a quick comment? Just to address Elise's concern about whether or not the flavor of this is against short-term rentals. So after Kevin's presentation, there was a lot of discussion. George Green actually brought up echoing the bullet on Kevin's slide, George Green, member of the planning board, said, do we even have a problem? So that was kind of the intent of this. Hey, before we even consider anything, and he suggested a referendum, and we pointed out that, hey, then only 25% of the people could vote on it, you know. So that's where the idea, it came up with the intent, before we even consider anything, do we even have an issue? So that was the flavor of this whole thing, you know, irrespective of what you think of the wording. It wasn't like, you know, let's prove the renters are all bumps, you know, that wasn't it. In my opinion.
I think it's going to be important on how we get this survey out if we do it. Because there's some real passion among people who have short-term rentals. And they're going to work real hard to slant their way. So if we don't get a cross-section of people, it's going to be a worthless survey.
I have a quick point on that. I've heard some concerns about people double submitting surveys, issues like that. I can look on the survey responses and sort it by IP address and see if we're getting multiple responses from a single IP address. So that's an easy way to correct that.
If they use multiple devices, though, kind of SurveyMonkey, you can use your laptop and then use your iPad and then you use your phone and take the survey 3 times. That'll be the one IP address. Awesome. Good job.
People have pretty dedicated
I
do that.
Yeah.
And you may have a husband and a wife who have different viewpoints or many.
That's not possible, John, is it? She's right.
It's hilarious. We gotta move on.
In that case, the vice controls.
Absolutely. That's a lot of submissive response. That's right.
Oh, my God.
I don't know, but, I mean, if we get enough people to respond, like if we send out reminders over a period of a few weeks, if you get enough numbers in there, you're going to have
I think it's fine. It's to make some.
Should we approve? Yeah. Can we planning board send this out?
A couple of changes, the big change was
With those few changes.
build effect,
Adversely affected.
adversely, yeah.
Should we vote on this or just?
Oh, we need to vote on
We're going to send it out wide from the town, thought the governing body.
If we're going to leave number 2 in, I would suggest we add another item there, unknown.
Yeah.
You know, people, you know, they may not know.
And we were going to add a question about multifamily or single
Or single family, that's a good point.
And on question 4, have you ever been affected?
Adversely affected. I would say adversely.
Well, she just said you affected and make it neutral.
We're gonna leave it up to town manager to.
Well, you know, affected is that
You can be positive.
if you if you own a short-term rental, have you ever been affected by it? Yeah, but I guess that's being affected. I don't know. Do we want to say adversely affected?
Well, I think you have to do.
You can do that, no question, possibly affected or negative.
Then,
That's it.
when you said
Affected,
yes positively,
yes, negatively,
Yes.
no, or,
you know what I mean?
yeah,
Yes,
that's
That's a
perfect.
good idea.
Perfect.
Have you ever been affected by short-term rentals in Pine Shores? Yes.
Positively,
Yes, positively. Yes, negatively.
no.
No. You got all that, Kevin?
I do.
Yeah, okay.
I move it.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Edwards. Second by Commissioner Corsello. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner.
Okay, thank you, Kevin.
Closed session?
Now we're up to item 11, which is our second public comment period. Caroline, do we have any people who wish to comment online?
Don't have any right now. I'll give people 30 seconds if they want to send me a message. They should speak.
They're almost asleep. Well, not asleep.
Okay, so nobody's raised their hand. So we'll go on to item 11, mayor and commissioner reports. Is there anything anybody would like to bring to our attention at this point? Or put in, or this also includes an opportunity to propose items for the agenda of an upcoming meeting.
Got a question for Charlie. How many people were listening in tonight?
Currently, there's 8 attendees. I think we had 12 at one point.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just have a question for the town manager. Do you have any new information, maybe Alicia, do you have any new information about East Carolina Council from what was in the, what was on the local phone?
I do not. I do not. I know they, the executive director is not there any longer and they have an interim, but I haven't heard any more.
I mean, all I would say is, I'm concerned, given so much public money goes through that agency.
Right.
Foreign people.
If I can, yeah.
Okay. At this point, thank you very much. I would propose that we go into closed session for the purpose of discussing property acquisition and personnel issues and approving closed session minutes first, and then we take a 5-minute recess.
Okay.
I have a motion.